Thanks. So I'm excited to be joining you all today to talk about data. You're going to hear a lot of really similar themes today. You've already heard a lot that kind of sounds the same, but hopefully this other perspective from sort of product will be useful. As Yelena mentioned, I'm a senior PM at Squarespace, and across the different places I've been a product manager, I've seen some common themes emerge around the way teams work together and a couple of strategies that have been really successful for us in bringing folks together. One of the jobs of a product manager is to make sure the disparate parts of a cross-functional group are coming together to build great products. And so I want to share some of those learnings with you. But first, a little bit about Squarespace. So our mission, fundamentally, is to democratize great design. We believe design should not be a luxury. And so fundamentally, our mission is to make beautiful products to help people with creative ideas succeed. We do that by empowering the next generation of the independent workforce of makers, thinkers, and doers by bringing together world-class engineering and industry-leading design. We've created a beautiful all-in-one solution to help people build websites, market themselves, sell online, and ultimately grow their business. Okay, so I'm a product person. Who else here is in product? How about anyone from engineering or design? Cool, a couple of hands. How about marketing or growth? Cool, so we've got a pretty representative slice of what it takes to build great products. But how many of you feel like there are times where you're talking to other members of your cross-functional group and you're not on the same page? So the conversation sounds something like, from an engineering perspective, design wants us to build something that I think is going to completely miss the mark. Or a product manager is saying, growth is bringing in these customers who are going to adversely affect the features I'm working on. Or engineering is saying something like, I don't understand why we're doing all of this. Or marketing is looking at numbers in something like Google Analytics, and they have a very different view of the world than everyone else in the org. Does any of that sound familiar? So I've seen that happen a lot. And it's symptomatic of misalignment. And the problem here is that to build great products, each of us is making lots of decisions about what to do as it pertains to the areas that we have control over. And when we're not speaking the same language, when we're not aligned, it feels like these decisions, at best, are being made without us, and at worst, are just the wrong choices. And that we're ending up with kind of bad results. But the reality is that as humans, we've evolved to be really cooperative. We've managed to sustain cooperation for however long humans have been in existence. And we've done this with having a diverse set of skills. So not everyone can do the same things. And that's emblematic of how a lot of our cross-functional groups work. And one of the solutions I've seen be really successful in bringing together groups of people who weren't previously aligned is this idea of hypothesis-driven development. And so I'm going to talk about 3 ideas on how to employ hypothesis-driven development with some stories about how we do it at Squarespace that hopefully will be useful that you can take away. And that build on some of the themes that you've heard on this morning. So the first is starting with goals and not features. So when you're building a roadmap, reframe that in terms of what you're trying to achieve and what hypotheses you might have that would enable those. I'll talk more about that in a second to make it more tangible. Second, crucial to being aligned is talking about your customers in the same way. Very often when we say, we think this is good for users or we think this is good for users, our mental model of who that user is different from the person to whom we're talking. And so I want to talk about some strategies to make sure that you are talking about the same kind of person and that it's driven by data and things that are measurable. And then lastly, emphasizing the landings, not just the launch. I'm a product manager and I love pushing out new features and I love celebrating that with our team. But there's much more to it. And I want to talk about some strategies that enforce and reinforce a culture of bringing the learnings and celebrating the outcomes as well as the inputs. So starting with goals versus features. So I'm going to frame this by talking a little bit about the theme and then an example from where we're doing it at Squarespace, and then some ways that you can use a tool like Amplitude to help bring this concept to life, starting with redefining the roadmap. So I'm pretty new to Squarespace. I've been there less than a year. And what I was seeing happen a lot is that when we talk about a roadmap, what someone would hear me say when I said roadmap was really a backlog. So it was a semi-prioritized list of features. And that seems like a really ineffective way of communicating the things that your teams are responsible for. And one project where I saw that is what we call sort of getting started. So one of the teams that I'm the PM for is responsible for the part of the user experience between when they leave our front site, when they click or tap the Get Started